You're gonna love these Sawhorses. They're rock solid and you only need a few inexpensive 2x4s to make them. And they stack. Hey, before I get started, just a couple of reminders. First, don't forget to subscribe to Woodworking for Mere Mortals and click on the notification bell so you won't miss any of my videos. Second, if you haven't already done so, download my free set of plans for the BMW, the basic mobile workbench. This is a rock solid workbench that easily rolls away when not in use, and it's easy to build with limited tools, and hey, it makes a great first project if you've never built anything before. And it's a great addition to your shop if you're already an experienced woodworker. Head over to basicmobileworkbench.com to get your free set of fully detailed plans. Without a dedicated workbench, the next best solution for small space woodworkers is a pair of Sawhorses. They're highly portable, they're easy to build, and you can even store them outside if you want. A single Sawhorse can be handy for cutting boards. You can even clamp the board to it if you want and saw right on the edge. And by dropping a board across a pair of Sawhorses, you've got a great work surface and temporary assembly table. These are sturdy and super easy to make. You'll get a lot of experience and practice with your circular saw, especially making bevel cuts right from the start. Plus, there's a lot of room for error built into this design. Of course, the obvious question here is how are you going to make a pair of Sawhorses if you don't already have a pair of Sawhorses or any other work surface for that matter? Well, it's not as difficult as it might seem. First of all, you just need something to prop up the lumber that you're going to be cutting. The simplest solution would be to just get a pair of crates or boxes. You could use a pair of buckets like these, just turn them upside down, and that'll be enough to support the lumber like that. And you can use your foot to hold it in place while you make your cuts. But a lot of you probably already know that my favorite solution is to use a sheet of styrofoam building insulation. This provides complete support for the lumber that you're going to be cutting, and the saw blade can actually just cut a little bit into the styrofoam insulation without harming the blade. Plus, it's easy on the knees. You're only going to need 8 2x4s to build this pair of Sawhorses, but I bought an extra one. I always like to give myself a little bit of insurance in case I screw something up. I'll have an extra board to fall back on. And if everything goes according to plan and I don't need that board, well then, I got an extra 2x4 I could do something with. I'm gonna start by cutting out the legs. I've set the base of my circular saw to 22.5 degrees. If you are cutting on styrofoam, you'll need to retract your blade guard to get the saw started. Now I can just move this over and measure out the length of the legs. I'm making mine 30.5 inches long. You can adjust the length of yours if you want it a little higher or a little lower, whatever is most comfortable for you. Your saw will have 2 marks. I've got a couple of notches in the base of this one that help me follow a line. I would use this notch for 0 degrees straight crosscuts and follow the line on this notch if I'm making a 45-degree bevel. Since I'm making a 22.5-degree bevel, I need it to go right about in the middle. The easiest way to do this is to set my saw up visually where that's gonna cut by looking in on the side. To make sure I get straight cuts, I'll hold my speed square firmly against the 2x4 as I glide the base of the saw along its edge. I'm gonna mark that board and use this to measure out the rest of the cuts. And to do that, I'll just take it and I can flip it around this way. Make sure the ends are flush over here and draw a line. Whenever you have multiple boards to cut out, in this case I need to cut out 8 legs for the 2 Sawhorses, it's always a good idea to have a strategy in place on how you're going to cut the long boards that you have. In this case, I cut the 4 boards that all have the 22.5 degree bevel on each end out of 2 of my 8-foot 2x4s. These are the leftover pieces. So I still have that 22.5 degree bevel on one end of each piece. What I'll do is I'll make that same 22.5 degree bevel on this end of my 8-foot board and then come down and make that same bevel on this end. The reason why I'm doing this is because the last 4 cuts I make are gonna be at 45 degree angles. And by doing it this way, it allows me to cut all of the shallower angles at once, reset my saw to 45 degree bevel, and then cut all 4 of those at once. It just ensures another level of accuracy. After unplugging my saw, I can reset my base to 45 degrees. And while you're at it, it only takes a minute to just confirm that you're getting a 45 degree cut. If your 45 degree positive stop on your saw isn't cutting at exactly 45 degrees, just make the adjustment now. Now I can plug it back in. Okay, I'll use my same measuring stick that I marked and once again line up the 2 ends to where they're flush. And come over on this side and make another mark. So the trick here is that I've got to saw from this direction. I'll flip the board around because these 2 angles are going to be opposite this time. The 45 degree angle will be going this way, whereas this one comes in that way. I'm gonna attach the legs together using glue and screws. And I just need a flat surface to work on. I'm gonna use my driveway here instead of the styrofoam. Make sure you've got your angles all going the right direction. The 45 degree bevel will butt up against the face side of this board with its 22.5 degree bevel flat on the top. I'm gonna use 2.5-inch screws to drive through this direction. You want your screws going from this board into the face grain of this board. That's a lot stronger connection than if I was to drive the screw this way into the end grain of this board. Since this is so close to the end of the board, I'm going to drill some pilot holes first using a drill bit that's slightly smaller than the diameter of my screw. First I'll apply some wood glue. And join them together. So you should be able to line these up and they all should be reasonably the same height. A couple of mine are slightly different. The board slid a little bit when I screwed them together. I'm not gonna worry about it because it's a sawhorse. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you wanted to though, you could use your random orbit sander and smooth all of these so that they're the exact same height. Instead, what I'm gonna do is just pair up these two that are the same size and these two that are the same size. These will be a lot easier to stack if one sawhorse is slightly longer than the other sawhorse. So now I'm gonna cut out the top and the front and back braces on each of these, making one set a ½ inch longer. Okay, so the way to set these up is to set the legs about where they need to be and then line up the top piece. And of course you want that centered in there as best as you can. Next, you can use these cross braces to help square it up. Just set them down the ground flush with the ends of the legs. And when you think you got a reasonable fit there, we can glue and screw these in place. And be aware of where those screws are so that you can drill slightly off center of those. I'll measure and draw a line on each leg where I want these cross braces to go. I can line the bottom of the board up with that line and I'll temporarily clamp it into place. Two screws is plenty to hold each side in. Just make sure that you stagger them so that they're not running along the same line of grain. The easiest way to attach these end braces is going to be to tip this on its side. And rather than measuring anything, I'll just place this board, line it up against those front braces, and draw a line where I want it cut on both sides. And I can actually use the sawhorse to saw a board. The important thing with these end braces is to screw them into the legs, not the end grain of that front brace. Well, as it turns out, I can't count very well. I only needed 7 2x4s for these Sawhorses. So, hey, now I've got 2 extra 2x4s. What will I do with them? I really think it's worth the trouble to make one Sawhorse slightly longer than the other one. It makes stacking them so much easier. When they're both the same size, sometimes they'll bind on the way together. This way, they just set neatly onto each other. You might want to mark one so that you can easily identify which one goes on the bottom and which one stacks on top. If you'd like to build my stacking Sawhorses, you can download free plans, link down in the description. And if you're ready to start putting together your own woodworking space, download my free plans for the BMW at basicbubbleworkbench.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. Are you done?